Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Today, a little more of a focus on business. I'm joined by Alice Heiman, internationally recognized sales strategist, host of Sales Talk for CEOs. Alice, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'd love to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about now I love this topic, the CEO's role in sales, driving growth from the top. And I have to tell you, Alice, I did a ton of research when I was just looking into thought leadership more and more. And to me, it's amazing the impact a CEO can have, not only in the digital marketing, which is kind of my area, but also in sales, which obviously is yours. So really excited to get into this topic. But before we dive into this, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the quick story because it's a long one because I've been in business a long time. So I started off as a public school teacher, which people are usually surprised, but all of the background I have from that has helped me do my job, and it's just really tremendous because people need to change their behavior if they want to get a different result, right? And as a teacher, I was a special education teacher in elementary ed. That was my undergrad, and my graduate degree is in literacy and helping children read. And so in every case, the parents need to make a change and the kids need to make a change, right? And you're learning how to help people willingly change their behavior. Otherwise, right, doesn't work. And so that background has been very helpful, although at the time that I went into business, I didn't know it, but I didn't ever plan to go into business. I planned to be a teacher. And during that time that I was being a teacher, I accidentally went into business in two ways, one with a for-profit and one for a nonprofit, because I am an entrepreneur. I have always been one. I did not know what that word even meant, but I am a starter of things, an igniter, right? And so while I was teaching, I started children's bookstore and resource center for parents and teachers because there was a need in the market, and it was wonderful. But that's where I got my MBA in business. I learned how to write a business plan before this was before the internet, right?
Sure.
Write a business plan, fund it, and open a business. And then 3 years later, promptly close it because it wasn't profitable and I couldn't feed it anymore. Right. So that was a good learning. And at the same time, I became a mom and realized there were no resources for moms and started a mother's club. That was a nonprofit, grew it to 600 members. So
Wow.
I'm just a person who starts things. Right. And so from there, I ended up, again, not going into business like on purpose, but my dad had grown a very lovely sales methodology company and he needed my help and he kept asking me to work for him. So I was doing projects on the side while I was still teaching, but finally he talked me into going to work for him full time. And so that's when I went to Miller Heiman. And it's funny because this was in the early 90s. And I did not join that company to do sales. I joined that company to improve their curriculum because I'm a curriculum specialist from my background.
Huh.
And then in that time working with my dad's company, I did revamp all the curriculum. I did start training that curriculum. Then I started training the trainers. And then I became the account manager for some of the company's largest accounts like Coca-Cola, Hewlett-Packard, AT&T, Fidelity Investments, Dow Chemical. And so I kind of got catapulted into the world of sales and the world of the complex sale. And so when my dad sold the company, after that, I was like, okay, I will start my own company and I will do these things. And at that time it was the .com. And so I started working with these senior leaders from all these big companies I just mentioned. They were fleeing to these .coms and doing these little startups. And they called me and can Miller Heiman? And I go, well, Miller Heiman doesn't do that. But I can help you. What do you need? And they were like, oh, we got to start up a sales team from scratch. And I was like, okay. I had no idea how to do it. But I am the figure it out girl. So I figured it out. And I started working with CEOs of startups at the time, and recognized that I didn't love working with companies that were VC backed. So I moved myself over to more mature companies that were founder led. And I've been doing that ever since. So I currently advise the CEOs of technology and innovative companies who have a business to business complex sale, and are a bit more mature. So they're not startups, and I help them with their go to market strategy to make sure that they have the value in their company that they want so that they can take on debt or equity financing. They can do acquisitions or perhaps exit.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thank you for that. We got a good sense of what you're doing. Let's jump into the topic a little bit, because you're working with founder-led companies, and I'm assuming, and I think before the show we are talking about, these are typically companies the founders have been there 10 years or more, and a lot of founders, especially with the companies you're working with, which tend to be bootstrapped because you're not working with the VC pack
Right.
companies, these are probably founders who've been out there in the trenches and built it from the ground up and did their own sales and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about these the leaders that you've got now. Are they as engaged in the sales as they once were? And why then, or are you seeing that once they get to that point, they lose touch with it and maybe you need to bring them back in a little bit?
Well, they're all engaged in some way, right? And I always say that the CEO will always have a role in sales, but that role changes as the company matures. So sometimes when I get a 10-year-old company, 10 plus year old company, they're all the CEO is still doing a lot of the sales, right? And that's okay. I had one recently that had built a whole sales team, wasn't working, got rid of the whole thing. And he went back to founder led sales and it worked remarkably well. So it's pretty much all over the board. But I think the important thing is that the CEO will always have a role in sales. And it just is, what is that role right now at this moment in time? And how will that change for the future? So I think a CEO has to be prepared to figure out what that is. And so in some cases, with a company that's more mature, where there's a few salespeople and some sales leaders in place, the CEO's role is with the largest customers to keep in touch with their CEO and their senior leadership, to make sure that they're completely satisfied, things like that. And in some cases, it might be when there's a very large prospect that needs that CEO confidence, they come in on one of the sales calls where their leaders are there. I always say match like levels. Don't bring your CEO in to talk to, mid-level managers. You bring them in when there are higher level senior people there. It's not always a CEO, because most of my clients sell to companies that are 10 to 1,000 times their size. You're not going to get their CEO on the phone if they're 1,000 times your size. Well, you could if it's depends on what you're selling, right? But most of the time not. So they may meet with a general manager of a division or something like that, and that's fine. So we want to get our CEOs positioned properly if we're going to bring them in, and use them as leverage to close a large deal or to keep a large customer happy. And so those are things that a CEO should always do, no matter what stage they're in. And then just depending, right, on if they're earlier stage or they've decided what's they've been doing for sales isn't working, the CEO can step back in. I do think that the CEO should know and understand enough about sales to see and understand when things are working and not working. And our world has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I know everyone is feeling that. And especially with AI coming into the picture, we have to examine everything we are doing in sales to see if it's still working. And that means really taking a look at all the touch points from hello to I'm your loyal customer, to see if those touch points are the quality that we want them to be, that those are an exceptional experience. From the digital part, that you do, right? And how that lives on through the sales cycle, to the human part, to, after the deal is closed, that's still part of the customer journey. Now they're your customer, they're still on their journey, And what are we doing for onboarding? What are we doing to make sure they're successful using what we've sold them? And so the CEO should be examining all of those things to make sure that the customers are supremely happy. They continue to buy, they buy more, and they make referrals to other companies who can buy.
So in that scenario, you know, what you started out talking about the role of the CEO, maybe it's part of the relationships, building those relationships, being brought in to establish the relationship with the CEO from the prospect. But then you also talked about, if I'm hearing this correctly, really kind of overseeing the entire sales process, at least reviewing it and understanding it and having input into it.
Yeah, listen, unless they have a CRO, the CEO is the CRO. So they
Oh,
own that whole revenue function.
sure.
They should. They just may not. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Right? We want them to desperately, but that's something I have to tell CEOs all the time. You don't have a CRO. You are the CRO. You must do that function.
Well, I mean, you know, you're not going to have a company to manage if you don't do it and bring in the
Right.
revenue, right? But my question for you, and I'm curious, just your experience with so many of your clients and the people you've worked with, is what about, and I see this a lot, especially in manufacturing, somebody will become the CEO who doesn't have a background in sales. Maybe they have a background in operations. So, what do you do? Do you see that much? And how do you help those people?
Yeah, so I think that's fairly common in manufacturing or in especially in family-owned businesses where
Right.
someone rises through the ranks. And I have worked with many family-owned businesses in the past. They rise through the ranks, they have no experience in sales. So I'll just say this: get some. Go ride with those salespeople, talk to your customers, get some experience in sales because it's hard to manage something when you don't know what it is, right? How do you manage a process that you don't know or understand, have never done yourself? I mean, you can, but that most people who can do that effectively have gotten into that process and been part of it for enough time to understand it, right? And so with sales, if you've never been in sales, I suggest you go ride with your salespeople. And I suggest you talk to your customers and I suggest you learn it. And I think for a CEO like that, it's still the same. They have to do the same things. They may have a sales team and a sales leader and even a CRO. They still need to know how to help their team leverage them when they are needed. And
Sure.
so that becomes super important. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned, which is your world, the digital world, is every CEO should be an evangelist for their company. And where they are not, they are losing business, whether they believe it or not. Right. So if you are the leader of a company, people want to know who you are and what you are about. And you need to have some sort of digital presence. You don't have to do it yourself, someone can help you with it, but you need to have one and you need to be willing to be the face of the company so that leads can come in the door for your salespeople. So I think that's definitely this part of the CEO's role is always going to be evangelist.
Yeah, boy, you're preaching to the choir on that one, and the data really backs it up. I mean,
Right.
a
Oh, 100%.
CEO's presence on LinkedIn,
Yep.
they are 3 to 4 times more
Yep.
effective than a company LinkedIn page. So it
The
just
company
don't,
LinkedIn pages, I mean, you can keep posting on them, but the way the new algorithm is, forget about it.
yep,
You're not getting anything from that. You and your employees need to post. And
yep,
that is what is going to
absolutely.
make the difference. Yeah.
You know what I really like what you said, Alice, and I think it's really true is the getting out there and interacting with the customer and listening to the customer. And I feel like even if you have no background in sales, if you do that alone, you are like halfway home because you're hearing exactly what they want. And then it's kind of your job to just kind of really fulfill
Make it
and
happen.
make it happen and deliver on you want. And then suddenly you don't have to be an expert at closing. your product will sell itself and you'll sell yourself.
Honestly, no one needs to be an expert on closing. You need to be an expert on how humans buy, because if you're at the closing point and it's not closing, it's too late. You've done
Yeah.
everything wrong.
Yeah.
So you should know long before the day that are they going to sign, or they're not going to sign. You should know long before that
Yeah. Uh,
what's going on. And it's just the way we start the sale and position ourselves and the way we move through it and guide the buyer. It just baffles me that salespeople don't know timelines. They don't know whether the deal is going to go through or not. How is that possible? Who are you talking to? If you're not talking to the right people, you won't have any information. And so we close a lot of deals that way because people need to buy what we have. But that uncertainty comes from poor positioning, not asking the right questions, and not really understanding how your solution is going to truly benefit those humans and benefit that company.
I love it. Let's let's move on and talk a little bit then, since we're kind of talking a lot about customers here, as we should. But one of the things that we were going to touch on was how to align vision, strategy, and sales execution for sustainable growth. And what I really love about this is you're getting into like the vision and the strategy, which I've seen a lot of salespeople. They sleep through the meetings where the CEO is rolling out the vision for the company, and then they're like, "Look, man, I just got to go out and hit my numbers." I mean, you're talking about, hey, let's integrate the sales throughout the whole thing, and the CEO can drive it. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think that first of all, we have to kind of look at the word strategy. People complicate strategy. They make everything into strategy, and it's not. It's very simple. What is your position in the market now, and how are you going to improve it? That's it. Your strategy, that's everything. How you're going to do that is everything, right? So if you're going to make acquisitions to strengthen your position in the market, okay, that can be part of the strategy for that overarching strategy, right? And then how are you going to do those acquisitions? If you're going to get more direct sellers, great. Are you going to build a channel and sell through a channel? Great. All of those are good, right? But those in themselves are not strategies. Those are really tactics that do that one thing: improve your position in the market so more people know who you are and have the opportunity to buy from you, and you then sell more, because it's just that simple. But people complicate sales way too much. Now, a CEO may have a vision for a company, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But that needs to be succinct, and it needs to be something that everyone can understand, and they understand how their job impacts that. But the vision should be something that makes customers supremely happy. So you have a product or service that people need. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in business. So there is a set of people out there, right, that will buy from you. And there is a set that are most likely to buy from you. We call them your ideal customers, right? We want to go find them. So I think when you start to look at the vision of a company, maybe it's to be seen as the premier provider of X, right? Okay, but why? Because the humans who buy that will then benefit, because their company will be faster, better, make more profit, and their customers will benefit, right? Because if I'm selling to you, what do you care about? Hitting your goals. How do
Right.
you hit your goals? The customers in your world help you hit your goals. So
Right.
I have to be keenly aware of that. So any vision, any strategy really has to be about how do we help the people we're selling to win? And that means they hit their goals, right?
Right.
So if we just keep that in mind, as we improve our position in our market and more people know about us, hopefully because we do an exceptional job, right? Yeah, we build our brand so people know about us. They buy from us. We do a great job. More people know about us, right? It feeds itself, right? We improve our position in the market. That gives us great benefit. So the only way we can really do that is if we do an exceptional job in the delivery of whatever it is that we've sold, and if customers become successful using what we've sold. So that is really the goal. So now everything else falls out of that. And if your salespeople don't understand who they serve and why they serve them, you're never going to get there. You will close deals, of course you will, But will you ever thrive at the level that you really want? No, because they're just doing a job. They have no idea. For example, I worked with a telecom company that sold to the franchise world. And so they'd have to get an agreement with the franchise first, which is one sale. And then they have to go and sell to each individual franchisee more deals, right? Okay. Well, if you're just like, okay, give me the list of the franchises, I'll call them and sell them some telecom, you're not going to get there. But if your attitude is, these small businesses need help to be successful in their marketplace, and I get to be the one who provides a system that helps them be more successful. Now I'm not selling telecom, I'm selling that business owner's success.
Right.
It's a whole different attitude. So if I don't know who I serve and why I serve them, I'm just selling stuff.
Yeah.
And selling stuff only gets you so far. You will make some sales. Of course you will, because people need what you're selling. And especially if your price is decent, they're going to pick out of 3. And if you're nicer, maybe they'll pick you. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for serving the population of people who need us most and doing that in a way that improves our position in the market. Like it's a circle.
Sure. Sure. So let's talk a little bit now. Like, let's say that the CEO has communicated that vision and that stripped down the strategy just to something just as simple as you're talking about. What can they do then to really kind of energize the sales organization and unlock some new opportunities?
They can then map the customer journey against their own sales process with their team, whatever senior leaders they have, and some of the salespeople. They can do this exercise to map and look at every single touch point from hello to I'm your loyal customer. And think about this touch point. So when I get on LinkedIn as a potential buyer for what you sell, what do I see? Is that a good touch point, or is it neutral, or is it negative? I see nothing at all. Your people aren't there. I can find nothing about your company. I go to your website's crap, which most companies' websites are crap. So how would I choose to buy from you when I see no thought leadership? I can't get what I need on your website. I have to fill out a form and wait for a salesperson to call me back. Are you kidding me? Okay. So like you are just putting friction in your buying process. So look at the buyer's journey mapped to how you sell and look at every touch point. A really great book I think every CEO should read is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. Now, he's talking about the restaurant business, but everything he's talking about applies. And the biggest thing I took away from that book is look at every touch point and see how you can improve it. Maybe you can't improve them all, but improve some of them, right? Maybe some of them are already really good. Capitalize on that. But when we have touches with our customer that are less than adequate, it's really hurting us, right? So how are we going to make headway? So every CEO, even if they have a CRO, they should implore them to do this exercise and figure out what all the touch points are. Not your sales process, the buyer journey, the buying process. You can map it against your sales process and you'll see there's huge gaps,
Yeah.
but improve all those touch points. In starting with, if they show up on LinkedIn, they see that you as CEO are evangelists for your company, that you love your company, you care about your company, you care about the people that work there, and you care about your customers. That's what they should see when they show up on LinkedIn.
You know, we out here in Madison, we have a company. It's called the Pleasant Company. You might have heard of it. They do the dolls, the Pleasant
Yes.
Roland, brilliant CEO and marketer. And I had a friend who worked there, and she said that Pleasant was very detail oriented. Really got down into the details. Maybe micromanaged a little bit, according to my friend, but she was really attentive to those details. And I want you to just talk to me a little bit about the touch points, mapping all that out. If I'm a CEO, maybe I'm hearing you say that and saying they might be thinking, oh man, I don't have time to do all that. How is a CEO going to approach that task? I mean, are you asking the team to map it all out? Or are you asking the CEO to do it? Walk me through that process just a little bit
Yeah,
more.
well, sometimes I would bring in somebody from the outside to help you do it because it needs to be facilitated. And every time I've ever done this exercise with a company, they map their sales process beautifully. They cannot overlay the customer journey. They don't know what it is. I'm like, well, you need to call some people and find out.
Yeah.
And of course, it's changed since AI has come into the picture. So there's a lot there. But no, the CEO doesn't have to do the work. The CEO requires the work and perhaps facilitates the work or joins in. If a facilitator is doing it, they put in their 2 cents.
Okay.
They're in the room doing this with a team and learning what their team thinks is their sales process, what their team thinks is the buyer process, where the touch points are, how could they be improved? That's important information. And typically, what a CEO will notice is his whole team needs to go back and get information from the customer because they don't know. And
Right.
that's fine, right? I mean, as a CEO, you are the orchestrator of, name it, you are the orchestrator of everything in your company.
Right.
So I would pull together marketing, customer success, any subject matter experts that talk to the customers, plus anybody in sales. That whole group, that whole go to market group needs to come together to do this exercise. And it's the CEO's job to see the problems, ask hard questions, right? And get everybody to move towards excellence.
I want to get your take on the role of the CEO as the evangelist and in this sales role. Uh, One viewpoint that is out there, and it's probably coming from a CEO who maybe um, wasn't in the sales role. They, and I've heard this viewpoint time and time again. They don't want to be the face of the company. They want the company to shine more than their own, their own profile, and they want their people to shine more than that. I think that in today's day and age, I mean, you're looking for leaders. We're looking for leaders. We want to see a name, a face behind that company, someone we can trust. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it to someone who says, "No, I want to stay
Yeah.
back
I
in
mean,
behind."
some of them say no and they will not budge and they're hurting their own company. They've made that choice. Just know you've made a choice to hurt your own company. Admit it, and you're not willing. That's fine. Um, there can be someone else who's the face. Maybe it's another C-level person. Um, some companies have evangelists if they're bigger companies. So, make some choices around that. I think that most CEOs don't want to do it because they don't know how. They don't have time. They don't want to look foolish online. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons, right? So, what I would say is if you don't have anybody in your own marketing department who can help you, then hire someone to help you and make it happen. Now, you can very carefully think about what it is you're going to post, but it shouldn't be about your company. It should be about your customers and their success,
Hmm.
right? And it could be about, you celebrating employees. I think that's fine too. But you celebrate an employee on a company page, nobody sees it. The CEO celebrates an employee on their page, many people see it, right? But it's not enough to just have the CEO engaged and posting. The CEO has to interact with their top customers. So they will have to take a little bit of time to go to see what the top customers are posting, what their CEOs are posting, and interact with that by clicking like, making a comment. And then the people in the company need to interact with the CEO's content as well. Because if the CEO posts and no one comes to that post, which will happen at first, because when you first start posting, no one knows they're the algorithm isn't going to help you. You need your own team to help you and your own customers to help you. So sometimes you can tag a customer or ask a customer to comment on your post. So there's really more to it than just posting. It's really about networking and it's about staying in touch with the people who matter to your business. And so maybe when you look at it that way, you think about it a little bit differently and you'd be willing to do it. So it's just as if you were in real life with them, talking with them, shaking hands, having a dinner. Can't do that all the time, but you can interact with them online and they see you. And then their fans see you posting on their, commenting on their post. So you can do a lot to help yourself. Now, what are we talking about here? Maybe once a week. Now somebody else can build the content and they can even post it for you. You just need to provide your login. And there are automations to do this as well, although I don't like them. And either does LinkedIn, they like native posting, but you can
Yeah.
schedule it.
Yeah.
because you want to tag the proper people in companies, etc.
Yeah.
So if you have maybe 3 different topics you're going to post about, that content gets written, you approve it, it gets posted, and then you go on as the leader and comment on your own company, personnel who are posting, and you also comment on your customers. That would be a lot, right? That would be huge. And it would take you 15 minutes a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just brought up a really good point, and because I think when people think about social media, they're just all about, oh, how do I get so many followers, and I'm going to get all the views. And to me, if you go like you just said, it's a networking opportunity. It's a chance to interact with people, and use that way. Um, Good things will happen.
Yeah, it's about the right followers, not the number of
Yeah.
followers, right? I need the people who believe in me, who would refer me, who would buy from me. I need those people to follow me. I don't need a bunch of random people to follow me.
Right. Although you will get them, but
Yeah. Right.
especially if your content is good. So, Alice, this has been really enlightening. We're at the top of the hour here. If somebody wants to learn more about you, work with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's easy. You can go to my website, which is aliceheiman.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn. The only thing I ask is that if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please write a note that says you met me here on Greg's show.
Yeah.
Now, I know that LinkedIn has done this dumb thing and they've limited the amount of messages you can use if you're not paying for the premium. So that becomes a problem, and I understand. So maybe then just comment on one of my posts. So I'll have seen you ahead of time before you ask me. Is like, who is this? I have no idea. And I'm very close to my limit of how many connections I can have, believe it or not. LinkedIn thinks that's a smart thing to limit how many connections you can have. So you might be able to follow me, but not connect. And so I am, careful about who I accept, just because I need to know who they are and do they belong in my world, right? So because when I use up my connections, I'm done. It's kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, you can follow anyone you want. So you at least can go ahead and click follow. And then if you want to connect and have a conversation with me, please go ahead and try and do that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alice, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure.
And then thank you, everyone, for joining us in another edition of Thought Leaders Live. We'll catch you on the next one.